So this is intended for students studying OCR, economics, AS level and A level, the national and international economy. And one of the sections I like to start with my students, because it's relatively straightforward, is unemployment. So we need to know, we need to be able to define unemployment and unemployment rates. We need to have an awareness in trends of unemployment. They won't ask you a direct question, but they'd expect to see an awareness when you're writing an essay. We need to understand the government objective in terms of unemployment, explain how unemployment is measured and explain the difficulties in measuring unemployment, explain the causes of unemployment and the consequences of unemployment. There's also another specification objective, which is evaluate policies of different kind of macroeconomic policies or the government policies of dealing with unemployment, so the benefits and problems of using fiscal policy, monetary policy, supply side policies to deal with unemployment. I'm not going to do this in this presentation, but I do it in the individual fiscal, monetary, supply side presentations. Okay, so first of all, when you start the course, you might think, your definition of unemployment might be quite different to what the actual economic definition is. So when I show people this slide, it could be housewife or house husband, I don't want to be gender specific, but when I show people this slide, they often say most of these people are unemployed, when actually it's only these two people that would constitute unemployed, and that is because and that one as well. That's because the definition of unemployment is a situation when people are out of work but are willing and able to work. So someone that's, say, for example, a housewife is, okay, they're not in paid employment, but their job is sort of, maybe raising children or looking after the house. And so they're not actively seeking paid employment, so they wouldn't constitute unemployed. The labour force, when you hear kind of economic documents or articles referring to the labour force, that is just the number of people, that's just the people that are economically active. So some people are not unemployed even though they don't have jobs because they're economically inactive. Okay, so a lot of these people here would, this person is actually economically active, only doesn't matter that they're working for themselves, but a lot of these people here are economically inactive, so they don't get classed as unemployed. Okay, so that's unemployment. Oh, just a quick section on unemployment rates. The same definition, but it's just the percentage of people who are willing and able to work that cannot find jobs or cannot find work. So that actually turns that definition from 2 marks into 3 marks, having that rate behind it, and it's just meaning the percentage. So next section then, looking at reasons why people are unemployed. So I usually do this activity with my class and you get very interesting opinions back. But we're just focusing on, we're not looking at, because people are lazy. It's not actually a type of unemployment, because we're looking at people who are willing and able to work. So they wouldn't actually, in our economic definition of unemployment, wouldn't actually be classed as unemployed. There's no such thing. I'm sure there are some people that may be too lazy to work, but there's no such thing in kind of economics, or the section that we look at as too lazy to work. Okay, so what are our definitions of unemployment? Well, if I just give you a quick overview, in OCR economics, there's loads of different types. So in OCR economics, we mainly focus on these 3 different types. And cyclical unemployment is due to a lack of aggregate demand in the economy. So it's sometimes called demand deficient unemployment. And the reason for this is employment, or having workers, is actually a form of derived demand. So you don't just employ people because you like the idea of employing people, not unless you're a little bit weird, but you employ people because you want them to do something or make a product or make a service. So if there's not enough demand for that product or that service, then businesses aren't going to employ people, and therefore you get situations where there's unemployment. Another type of unemployment is structural unemployment, which is caused by the decline of certain industries. due to changes in demands and supply. So I always think that this is a mismatch between the amount of labour demanded and the amount of labour supplied in the market. And it might be for a few different reasons. One of the reasons the book talks about is technological reasons. So technology makes the need for workers obsolete. So there's a lot of automation, say. So in that sense, there'd be a lot of supply of labour for certain jobs, but not very much demand for it. This is certain industries we're looking at. There might be international reasons for it, so jobs have moved abroad because of cheaper labour rates, or there might just be a skills mismatch. So workers have skills, but not the right kind of skills that you need for jobs. So we often hear about this in the news, that there's going to be kind of a skills mismatch, that we don't have enough, say, programmers or computer, configurators and that kind of skill. So definitely, if you can take a course in coding, your skills should be in demand in the future. And then the last type of unemployment I'm going to look at is frictional employment. Oh, I've got two different pictures here. Oh, a nice picture there. So short-term unemployment occurred when workers are in between jobs. So there might be search unemployment. So you might be so busy at work that you might be so busy at work. Oh, I think my presentation has crashed. No, it seems to be fine. You might be so busy at work that you just can't search for another job. So you actually have to kind of quit your job, or you might be very unhappy. You just have to quit your job and have a period of time where you're unemployed, just so you've got some time to search for something more suited to you. Or it might be seasonal. So I don't think there's very much demand for Father Christmas in April. So, but you can have seasonal the other way. So you have jobs where, they're only needed in the summer. So those are our three, that's an overview of our three different types of unemployment. That's just a kind of worksheet that we don't need to look at. One of the important things to look at is the consequences. So obviously there's going to be lots and lots of kind of consequences for the individual person of someone who's unemployed, because they want to have a job and they can't find employment. But unfortunately we're not kind of not that these things aren't important, but we're not as interested in those because we're studying economics. So we're looking at the impact on the economy as a whole. So it reduces inflation, you have a loss of output, so there's this, kind of, you're operating within your production possibility curve. Hysteresis, this is a great one to learn. It comes up in the year 2 as well, or some Americans would pronounce it hysteresis. But I'm British, so I call it hysteresis. And it's basically unemployment causing unemployment. And the way that this happens, well, according to OCR at least, is that skills become rusty. So the longer you're unemployed, the more likely it is that you'll remain unemployed, because, if you've been out of the game for a while, people maybe don't think that you've got the skills, and the new skills haven't been updating, so that can actually cause unemployment. You might be a major buyer in your economy of an export of another country, and if there's very high unemployment, one of the problems of unemployment is people don't have like a very high income, so they probably cut back on what they're spending, or definitely cut back on what they're spending. So it might have an impact on other economies. If you're not earning, you don't tend to pay very much. Well, you don't pay income tax, but you might not consume lots of products, so you're not going to pay as much VAT just because you're not consuming as many products. And tends to be like essential products. You don't get charged VAT on them anyway. So food in your supermarket, for example. The government has to spend money on benefits, so obviously an opportunity cost for them. And you tend to find in areas with high unemployment, or where unemployment increases, you tend to have an increase in crime rates, and also mental illness as well, so increased spending on healthcare for those people. This is just a favourite film of mine. It's called Up in the Air, and it's about people that are in the business of making people redundant. They deliver the message. And what's interesting in this is they film these little interviews with employees, and these are like, I think the people in the film like acting, but they're actually real people that have been made unemployed, and they describe the impact it has on their life, and it's really interesting. I definitely recommend that film, and it's an entertaining film. Anyway. Okay, and then if we think about what impact does it have on actual businesses, consumers have less income, so there might be less demand for the products of the business. But if there's lots of people unemployed, there's probably a lot of people that want jobs. So at the moment, with the recession, with just recession passing and lots of people still unemployed, means that when you have a job vacancy, lots of people tend to apply. So you have your kind of pick. And it also discourages industrial action, so that might be, strike action, because people are worried that they might lose their jobs, so they're not maybe going to ask for a higher wage. Okay, so we've got through define unemployment and unemployment rate, and causes of unemployment and consequences of unemployment as well. So big sections now, so let's just tidy up and do these other sections in the middle. So this is quite interesting. I did a little quiz with my students. It was longer than this, but I'll just show you this one question. So this was from last year. So 2.47 million people, actually it's from 2013, but 2.47 million people unemployed in the UK at that point in time. How many claim job seekers allowance? And my students actually guessed this number. So they were saying, oh, there's fraud, more people are claiming job seekers allowance. Now, regardless of what you read in some trashy newspaper or what Katie Hopkins is saying on TV, it's actually this number. So far fewer people claim job seekers allowance than are actually unemployed, and we'll find out a bit later in the presentation. But if we look at employment data as well from around the UK, we can see it's actually different for different areas. And there's many reasons for this, but one of the biggest reasons for this is very structural problems in certain areas. So we can see Birmingham is features in the top 5 at this point. This was a few years ago that this map was produced. But one of the reasons for that is structural skills mismatch, because there used to be a lot of like secondary sector production there, so manufacturing, especially of cars, and a lot of that's moved out of the area, moved abroad. So there's lots of these people in that area that were trained to produce cars and put together cars, and there's no longer demand for their skills, and they've been unemployed for a while, so maybe suffering from hysteresis, and it's hard for them, and they'd have to retrain, but that's expensive for them to do off their own back. So we see these structural problems concentrated in certain areas. So unemployment is not just when we see the figures, it's an average, or it's a figure, an aggregate for the whole economy. But it's not actually really like that. Some areas suffer more than others. Past paper question here. So causes of unemployment, 4 marks. So we could say structural, and we could we'd explain what that means. And then we could say cyclical, and again, explain what that means. So very important to know your definitions. And then a bit of a trick question here. Comment on the economic effects of low unemployment. So meaning high employment. So it's comment on questions. So we've got to talk about the benefits of low unemployment. Would kind of boost aggregate demand in your economy because people are earning and then have higher incomes, so can earn more, and lots of benefits like that. But also comments. So we've got to kind of sort of disagree with that. So maybe it would also increase demand pull, inflation, maybe also increase cost push inflation because people are asking for higher wages, but also depends upon how low. What do you mean by low? Is low for this country, or low for a country like Zimbabwe where unemployment would be very high? So lots of nice points in the mark scheme. I definitely look at the mark schemes to help you revise. Okay, next point. How can we measure unemployment? 2 main methods of measuring unemployment: claimant count and labour force survey. Claimant count is just very quick to do because we already have the data. It's ONS provide this data, and it's count of the number of people claiming job seekers allowance. Well, I suppose it would be the Department of Work and Pensions who would actually hold the data first of all, but it's just like they've got it in an Excel spreadsheet, collects automatically, and there we see 2013 quarter 3 1.3 million people. So this is the people that claim job seekers allowance. The other method is a survey. So you survey 60,000 households each month. The Office of National Statistics do this. And they came up with that figure for unemployment. We can see that figure is a lot bigger than that figure, quite significantly, nearly 1 million different. So not at all similar. So, what are the problems with using these measurements, and which one should we use? Well, some people do claim benefits without being entitled to it, so there's a problem there, but many more people are not eligible to claim benefits. So if you get made redundant and you're unemployed, but your partner who you live with earns a certain amount, you are not eligible for job seekers allowance. So, you could be unemployed, but you're not going to be counted in those figures. So on the whole, the claimant count would underestimate the number of people unemployed. And it's also not going to be very suitable for international comparisons, because who is able to claim job seekers allowance depends upon the particular government in power at that particular time. So it's different for different countries. However, there are problems with the labour force survey as well, because you do get sampling errors, because it's not a sample of, well, it wouldn't be a sample, but it's not a questionnaire of everyone in the country. It's not a census, it's a sample. So, if a particular month you just get a funny sample, it'll knock the figures off. But I think 60,000 is quite a big number, so you're less likely to get it. Okay, what does the government want to achieve? Low unemployment, obviously, because it causes all these problems, unemployment, and people become unhappy. Why would you vote a government in if they wanted to achieve high unemployment? Crazy. Some governments actually say they want to achieve no unemployment, so zero unemployment, but more realistic is low unemployment. Okay, so when you're looking at questions, you're looking for the chain of analysis. So unemployment, what's it caused by? These things. Well, that's very much level 2. You can get some marks for that, but you've got to explain why to get the full level 3 marks. Okay, and then if we're looking at the consequence of unemployment leads to lower tax revenue. Why? Why does it lead to that? So you've got to explain why. What would unemployment look like on a diagram? Well, this is Keynesian model. You might use a neoclassical model at your school, but we use Keynesian, so I'll explain this one. So this shows where the AS curve goes to its vertical point is the maximum output of your economy. So this is where you're fully employing all your resources. So the difference between that point and the point you're actually at in your equilibrium is the amount of unemployment there, and that's representing cyclical unemployment on that diagram. So I think we've covered all of the specification objectives. I think this one, you can look it up on the BBC website. It's called the Economy Tracker, and you can see unemployment tracking for the last kind of decade. Basically, it increased with the recession, but it's on its way down now. So good news.